Uhuru, Jebhim, Operoma, Lentai, Salve. Welcome to the first episode of the Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent podcast series, where we amplify voices, uncover realities, and dive deep into the lived experiences and resilience of communities discriminated on work and dissent worldwide. Global Forum of Communities Discriminated on Work and Dissent, also known as GFoD, is a platform voicing the rights and entitlements of those impacted by caste hierarchies and analogous systems across the continents, across the globe. Initiated in 2019, GFoD co-creates spaces that emphasizes the rights and dignity of marginalized communities affected by systemic discrimination based on work and dissent, such as Roma in Europe, Dalits and Burakumin in Asia, Haratin in Africa, Quilombola and Palenque in Latin America, and of course others who have suffered social prejudices while aspiring for a life of dignity and peace. We represent around 270 million people across the globe. Today we have Ms. Queen Bisseng from Cameroon, who's the UN Program Specialist for Africa at GFoD, based in Cameroon. A dedicated researcher and advocate, she focuses on the recognition of human rights defenders and rights experts working on the rights and entitlement of communities discriminated on work and dissent. She leads GFoD's initiative in Africa, actively engages with regional mechanisms, and has been intervening in various UN forums, including high-level political forum and Human Rights Council. As a resource expert on human rights, she has been echoing the voices of the communities discriminated on work and dissent in Africa as well as globally. Queen, let's start from the beginning. Do you remember the first time you became aware of discrimination in your community or around? And how did that experience share the way you think about social justice today?
Thank you, Naveen. I would like to say that ignorance is a barrier to development, because during my entire during my entire human rights career, I was ignorant of the discrimination and other forms of violation that communities discriminated work and dissent in my country, in my neighborhood, and even across Africa face. Not until I joined GFoD to know that these are human beings entitled to equal rights and dignity, but who are dehumanized, subjected to oppression, and stripped of their humanity solely based on their lineage, descent, and occupation. I came to notice and be aware of the existence of some of these communities, notably also in Nigeria, the Haratin in Mauritania, and the newly discovered community in Kenya, the Wata community, not to talk about the already ingrained communities such as the Bela and the Wahaya in Niger, the Saholi in the Gambia, the Wolof Soninke in Mali and Senegal, and even to the extent of discovering some other new communities known as the Swashing around North Africa. I then committed myself to fight for the rights of these communities by visiting the communities to understand their needs, meeting some key actors to recognize their status with the aim of visibilizing these communities and advocating for the promotion and the protection of their rights.
Was there any specific incident in the past during your childhood or even when you were a youth which impacted the way you looked at the communities or the discrimination based on work and dissent? Can you highlight that incident?
Yes, thank you, Naveen. In Cameroon, for example, we have the Mboro community, and they have a particular settlement in the town where I am, Douala. And these communities living in the economic capital are not really considered as human beings. You know, young girls from these communities do not have access to education, and most of them are giving up to get married at early ages. For those who have the opportunity to go to school, like those who were in the same class with me, they were discriminated against. We're in the same class, but we often mock at them, looking at them and not really considering that these are human beings like us. So this incident was the one that really triggered me while I was growing up, and I was asking myself these questions: that this is a child like me, this is a lady like me, this is a girl like me. Why should her education be stopped just because she's from another community? Why should her education be stopped just because she should get married to a man older than herself? Why is it that her parents are doing some particular jobs like leader work from generation to generation, and their parents, like the mothers, are doing some other menial jobs relegated just to them in the same community where we are? So these are the few things that came to my mind while I was growing, and I started reflecting that these Mboros are not different from us. They are human beings, and they should be given some kind of consideration.
Let's come to the next part, Queen. Before going further, the term communities discriminated on work and descent is not something most people are familiar with. I'm sure you would agree to this. If you want to explain it in a simple term to someone who's very new to this issue, how would you describe it?
Yeah, I would simply say communities discriminated on work and descent are one of the most discriminated, marginalized, rejected communities in every aspect of their life, be it social, economic, cultural, political, just because of their birth, because of the name, because of who they are, because of their descendants, because of their occupation, and they are really stripped of their rights. These communities face various forms of discrimination, including social economic exclusion, denial of their political representation, and barriers to education, healthcare. They are affected and they face restriction in employment, marriage, social mobility, due to the deeply ingrained prejudice, discriminatory practices which reinforce the cultural norms and informal institutions that deny these communities their dignity and rights.
Can you share a success story from either Cameroon or Gambia or either Africa itself where CDWD has achieved meaningful progress, whether through a legal victory or a major shift in the social attitude? And what were the key lessons we can learn from this?
Yeah, there are some few victories, though we cannot fully start rejoicing now. There are some countries like Niger, Mauritania that have some policies or legal tools that protect these communities discriminating work and descent. Though it still remains in the papers, but in practice, the rights are still violated. But recently, the African Commission on Human and People's Rights adopted a resolution on the promotion and the protection of the rights of communities discriminating work and descent. And I have the hope that because this resolution is from an organ of the African Commission, it's going to have more consideration. We'll have these communities use these tools as a flag to actually say we are human beings and we need our rights to be respected. We need to be recognized. We need not to be submitted to all forms of violations and looked upon as if we are animals. So for me, this resolution of the African Commission on Human and People's Rights is a victory, but a lot still needs to be done, because for this to be achieved, there is the need for collective actions from all the parties, from all the actors, from all the key stakeholders to actually make sure that this resolution is being internalized in each of the African countries and have the rights of these communities being respected.
The resolution itself, which you're talking about, Queen, it's in fact a big step towards advancing the rights of communities discriminated on work and descent. Can you further break it down for us, and why do you think it's a game changer? What do we need to do now in order to take this victory forward?
Yes, Naveen, thank you. This resolution is a significant step towards dismantling the deeply entrenched system of exclusion and ensuring that the affected communities are granted full recognition, dignity, and equal rights under the law. However, for this resolution to translate into meaningful changes, deliberate follow-up actions must be taken at national, regional, international levels. Like few action could be strengthening national implementation and legal frameworks to ensure that the resolution is not merely symbolic, the African government must incorporate the resolution into national laws and policies, ensuring explicit legal recognition of these communities as human rights issues. They need to establish and enforce anti-discrimination laws that criminalize caste and descent-based discrimination and provide legal rescue for victims. They need to ensure access to justice by creating specialized legal aid services for affected communities and train law enforcement and judicial bodies on discrimination-based and work and decent-related violations. Looking at the resolution as a tool for the promotion and awareness and also advocacy, a key challenge in addressing discrimination based on work and decent is the lack of awareness and visibility of the issue. To counter this, as I mentioned earlier, there is a need of mobilization from all the actors. The civil society has its role to play, and even human rights defenders. They must amplify the resolution at community, national, and international level, engaging the media, educational institutions, and policy cycles. The regional and national human rights institutions should conduct public awareness campaigns about these communities' discriminatory work and decent and the challenges they face. As I earlier mentioned about inclusiveness, there is a need for traditional and religious leaders to be briefed and educated about the resolution to foster community-led implementation that promotes inclusion and social cohesion. What about the regional and international follow-up mechanism? The resolution adopted is just the beginning. And now, to sustain the momentum, the African Commission itself should establish a monitoring mechanism to track the progress of the member states in implementing the resolution with regular reporting and obligations. The African Union itself should integrate discrimination based on work and decent protections into the broader human rights agenda, ensuring that African governments are held accountable for their commitment. There is a need of collaboration with the UN bodies and treaty mechanisms to strengthen and to ensure that it is included globally as a human rights discourse and mechanisms such as a universal periodic review. What about empowering the affected communities themselves? Because they need empowerment. No policy can be successful without the direct participation of communities themselves. And to ensure meaningful inclusion, communities must be involved in decision-making process. At all levels, from local governance to national policy formulation levels, while adopting the resolution. The importance and the need for capacity building initiatives should be implemented to empower these communities' leaders, activists, and organizations on the importance of this resolution. Naveen.
I'm sure you would like to talk about the recent Gambia Universal Periodic Review, also known as UPR process, which has taken place where not only Gambia has acknowledged the caste-based discrimination, the National Human Rights Commission report, which has strongly come up with evidences and acknowledged and recognized that similar forms of discrimination actually exist in the country. But also, while the UPR process was going on, several other countries had also raised concerns about caste-based discrimination. And also, they have acknowledged the fact that Gambia itself is acknowledging that similar forms of discrimination actually exist in the country. So, what are the key questions and interventions which were made over there, and how do you think they might shape the fight against caste-based discrimination or decent-based discrimination in Gambia and beyond? Queen.
Yeah, I think it's important to now put in place the tracking tools for this recommendation. Many countries, as you mentioned, did some very important recommendations to the Gambia, which was very key. And also, this is the first time while we were working on the looking at the past recommendation, there were very less countries that did recommendations about CDWD in the past. But this year, with the joint efforts of GFoD and also some of our rights experts on the field, we actually work on some joint reports and also some fact sheets where we came up to address some of these countries to talk to the Gambia, and this was done though the Gambia considered some of these recommendations and undermined some. We just hope that there is a great follow-up, and this we intend to do because we are planning a trip to the Gambia, and we intend to meet the key actors there in Gambia themselves itself, to make sure that the recommendation that were given to them by the other countries should really be considered and have it been internalized in country and to the benefit of these communities.
Before moving to the next question, Queen, I would like to ask you if you can reflect upon the Trokosi tradition which is prevalent in Ghana. How do you look at it, and how do you think we can tackle this practice?
Thank you, Naveen. Before mentioning about the Trokosi, I would just want to underline that discrimination based on work and descent is a violation to fundamental rights, like you mentioned about the policy, and contradicting Africa and international legal frameworks, including the Africa Charter on Human and People's Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and the Sustainable Development Goals. So affected communities often face barriers in accessing education, employment and land ownership, political participation, and justice system. So without strong legal and policy framework, because we just mentioned this injustice persists, deeply inequalities and undermining national and regional commitment to social justice. And this makes it an issue for policy and advocacy. Now, coming back to the Trokosi practice, this is an inhuman and degrading, shall I say, attitude or behavior towards human beings. The Trokosi practice in the Ghana is a practice where, in simple words, I would say young girls within the age of 12, 14, up to 24 are given to serve in a shrine to pay for the atonement committed by either themselves or a member of their family. And within the shrine, with the priest, they are submitted to all sorts of violations, including sexual assaults and bonded labor. These young girls within the shrine, paying for the sin that either them or a family member of theirs have committed, are deprived from going to school at this tender young age of a girl who is supposed to be in school, living in a shrine. And believe me, they are liberated from the shrine when the chief priest is certified and decide that they are free to go. Such practices still prevailing in a country is something worth to be fight against. It's something worth to be exposed. It's something worth to be visibilized and concrete action being taken to eradicate it totally.
Thank you, Queen. This is truly shocking. And even when we look at the Indian context, Dalit women in the communities have long endured similar harsh realities, I would say. And one such inhuman practice is the Devdasi system, which is still prevalent in parts of southern part of the country. And there is substantial evidence of sexual slavery and exploitation where women, especially young women from CDWD, are targeted. So this raises a crucial question. At what point does tradition or religion begin to infringe upon human rights? And who holds the power to impose these restrictions? Slavery is not just a relic of the past, it actually remains a global reality today. We cannot deny the existence of Trokosi, Devdasi and other forms of sexual slavery, I would specify. Whether they are less known in Africa and South Asia or other parts of the world, or deliberately silenced by the state to maintain the illusion that all is well. And the grim truth is that young girls are still being sexually enslaved, often under the pretense of repaying familiar sins. This is an issue that deserves deeper discussion, Queen, and in further podcasts, let's have a broader and deeper discussion on this thing. And as we approach a final question, Queen, I still believe every step we take forward makes it even more critical to keep pushing further for progress. And as you know, success is not just a milestone, it's a continuous journey. So as we move ahead, what do you see as the biggest challenge in this fight for justice of CDWD in the future, now that we also have an ACHPR resolution, now that even Gambia has acknowledged and other countries are also in the process of acknowledging the fact that similar forms of discrimination exist? Queen.
Yeah, the challenges remains the shrinking space. When I mean shrinking space, I mean especially for the African countries, I mean the space is still very close. Upon all the advocacy, upon all the fight, upon all the measures we are taking, it's still very difficult for individuals and even the states to acknowledge the existence of these communities amongst them. And what still, to acknowledge the fact that such practices, such discriminatory practices are still going on amongst the same citizens of a country just because they have a particular status. This will bring me to the example of the Garawal community in the Gambia, in the Sarule community, where you dive into a particular community, Naveen, where you can't even distinguish between the house from your left and the house from your right, who is noble and who is caste. But in the same community, there is a particular group calling themselves nobles who decided to actually discriminate, violate, undermine another group they tag slaves. And this group they are tagging slaves, denying to acknowledge this title and appellation, are submitted to all forms of violations, ranging from denying them access to worship places, denying them access to marketplaces, denying them access to education places, and even where they need to go and fetch water, which is a fundamental right. They don't have to fetch water because they are slaves. This time around, they are not slaves of colonial masters, but they are slaves of their own people in the same community, from the same village, in the same country. Naveen, I want to say, when you are in this village, it's not like those who call themselves nobles have big mansions as building, and the so-called slave do not have houses. No, you can't differentiate between the house of the slave and the house of the noble. But the issue remains at birth, intergenerationally. Because I am known to be from the noble community, I discriminate, undermine, persecute those that are called slaves. This is the challenge. Individuals find it difficult to actually admit the existence of these communities and even the violations still going on in the community and the same country. Upon all the advocacy and the meetings we conduct, be it the key actors and the stakeholders, they are always very surprised when we give the narrative. They ask themselves if this is still existing in the actual generation that we are. And we often say, yes, please take the necessary actions. So the real impact of this achievement will be felt only through strong inclusive actions and dedicated efforts at all levels. The government, the civil society, the local leaders must work together to create an environment where the rights of these communities are fully recognized, safeguarded, and uplifted.
Trust me, Queen, I think every time I have a conversation with you on the issue of communities discriminated on work and dissent, every single sentence of yours has pushed me again and again to think more about things we have achieved, about the struggle we have been through, and of course also what we really need to do now. And the whole discussion has been very motivating, Queen. And as we bring this conversation to a close, I'm very sure one thing which stands out is discrimination based on work and dissent is not just a historical injustice, and I'm sure you would agree to this. It's a pressing rights issue even now, and that demands a very, very urgent action. The ACHPR resolution itself, the Gambia UPR process showed that the global community is watching us, and it's not a national or a regional issue now. Now the global community is actually keeping a watch. They have started to speak up and they have started to call for a change. But as we discussed earlier, the policies and the recommendation alone are not enough. And of course, the real transformation actually happens when awareness turns into action and commitment turns into enforcement. And it's up to all of us to ensure the momentum actually remains. The fight is for equality and justice. Thank you, Queen, for this powerful interview. And we hope to have you on the podcast episodes very soon again. Thank you very much, Queen.